Hydration is very good for the body.
All right, I'm gonna do it too.
Salute. Nice.
This is my favorite cup.
Why is it your favorite?
It's the perfect size. It's rounded. Holding it feels nice.
You know what? That reminds me of something you told me. You and your wife had a challenge once about like a cup. Like maybe someone didn't recognize the favorite cup, and you're like, hey, look, I'm never going to have that detail orientedness to remember which cup you're talking about. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was not a challenge at all. That was one of the worst fights we've ever had in my marriage.
Okay,
I broke down and cried while I was driving.
My God. Hey, well, this episode is about gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually relevant to this episode, so I'm gonna actually tell the story since you brought it up. So this is like maybe 2014, so 9 years ago. We've been married for about 2 years, I'd say. And then one day, Angel's like just walking around saying, "Where's my water bottle? Where's my favorite water bottle?" And I'm just like doing stuff on my computer, so I just noted that. I just keep doing this thing, right? And then the evening, she's like, "Oh, where's my water bottle?" The next day, she's still like, "Where's my water bottle?" And then finally, I'm like, "Okay, I should try to help a bit." So
Okay,
I said,
then I will help. Okay.
and I asked her, say, "Hey, so," because I didn't know it takes so long to find a water bottle, right? It's like usually she'll just find it. So I said, "So what color is that water bottle?" And then for some reason, she just blasted on me. She's like, "You don't even know the color of my favorite water bottle." And then she got really upset. And then we got into a huge fight because, again, my talents are in like a lot of things, like how people are feeling or software interfaces, whatnot, right? And I'm very bad at observing my physical environment. Like, I lived in my home for 4 years before I realized when you open the door right on the side that there's a fire extinguisher, okay? Big red, large item, right? I didn't notice that. I'm not good at observing things around. Like, I have to look at it to notice it. Like, I don't, sometimes when I'm in my thought, I'd be eating something, and then when I look at it, it's gone, but I don't have memory of eating it, okay? So I live in my own world in that sense, okay? And so but on the other side, I think a lot, and I sometimes come up with useful things. So at that point, I broke down because I feel like you are putting me at a threshold that I just cannot meet. Like, I don't notice these things. I can't pay attention to these things. So, because usually what I feel like I need to keep improving. We talk about this philosophy, right? When you get into a marriage, that's a new level. You need to learn new skills. You need to improve. But at that point, I'm like, oh, this is the threshold. And my handicap makes me unable to meet this threshold. And so I just felt really hurt because I was like, I'm just offering to help, right? I was asking because I want to help. And then I get like slammed by you about these things. So I think, yeah, that was one of the biggest arguments. It wasn't even an argument. I just started crying. And it's interesting because in our relationship, I've cried quite a few times, right? When we get into huge fights, sometimes teary, like usually like teary. If I do like break out and cry, it's like by myself when I'm like thinking about it afterwards, driving or on my own and just thinking, oh, how I got myself in this situation, blah, blah, blah. Like self-pity kind of thing. I think there's the one time, maybe 1 or 2 times that I just kind of broke down in front of her. And then she got even, like, she was still like in her aggressive mode, but I think caught her off guard, and she's still like was yelling at me, and I just said, stop yelling at me. And I think she's like, oh wait, this is like, he's actually pretty hurt. And then she paused. Yeah, but anyway, that was a bad time. But I think today our conversation is about, should you push people to become more driven to reach goals that you want them to do? Because in the past few episodes, right, we're constantly talking about for ourselves, we want to strive for a higher goal, want to improve. We talked about you don't want to live your life in comfort. You always want to be a little bit uncomfortable so you get to a better place. But does that mean that we should force other people around us to do the same thing? And I think, Jun, you have an example in your family about doing that and how that goes.
We're sharing stories. We're sharing stories, so I'll share mine. So my wife has been at the same company for over 10 years, and it's it's great for her because she has a lot of comfort, right, a lot of stability. But especially in the beginning of a relationship, I was always pushing myself to do better, pushing myself to learn, pushing myself to grow. And in that pushiness of driving myself, I would also drive Kim to be better, to be more productive, to get a promotion, to get another job, to start a blog, to start whatever it is, so that we can start building up this income, right? And I always had these dreams of like a power couple, or I had these dreams of both pushing each other to learn every single day, and those have been some of our largest fights. Absolutely, like there'll be fights that we have where, especially early on, I was pushing her to start a blog, and you know as well as I know, you can't really push somebody to do something because they're going to detract. They're not going to want to do it. You have to like inception it. I mean, that was my idea, right?
You helped her start the fashion thing, right, with her friend.
Yeah, you remember, yeah. But
yeah.
It can't just come from me, right? It has to come from that person, and that has taken a long time for me to learn. Not just with my wife, but with anybody, with my brother, with anybody. You can't like push them to do it. It can't be your idea. They have to come up with the idea. It's kind of like, right, the movie Inception. So, and then there's been many, actually some of our biggest fights have been over her job. Like, and I get frustrated. I become condescending, especially when it's a family, someone you love, someone you're so close to. All of a sudden, you get rid of all niceties. You know, you don't hold back, and you just become a little condescending. It's like, oh, your job sucks, or you're not making that much money at your job. You haven't been, given the promotion that you deserve, or the merit increases that you deserve. Your hours to dollar earned is not good, especially in the Bay Area when we were in San Francisco. How can anybody afford to live in the city like that? And it's, first of all, it's 100% my fault to communicate in that way, even though I think deep down before that it was more of a trying to be a productive conversation of, hey, you know what you should do? This is an exact conversation that we had. Data science is the hot new thing right now. This is like 2-3 years ago, maybe. Why don't you study data science, with me in the nights or in weekends, and then that could be the stepping stone for your next job. And of course, you can't force anybody to do it. Like, same thing if I have once our children grow up, if we don't give them that hard work and the value and determination as a child, all of a sudden when they get to college, or before they get to college in high school, you're not going to change them at that point. So what I'm trying to get is those have been some of our biggest fights, and it's because I was trying to change a person into becoming, I guess, more like myself, more driven, more productive, more trying to get a better career or earn more income, and it's always had big conflicts. So I think today we want to talk about that, sharing our stories. Yu-kai, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah. I think the key topic is, should you apply your own standards to other people? Because I think the two personal stories we shared are kind of similar. It's not that you're condescending, it's that you have this standard for yourself, right? And especially because you respect your significant other, your spouse, you want her to have that meet that same standards. And I think Angel's the same way. She's very detail oriented. She observes things. She constantly looks at what could go wrong, and because she respects me, she wants me to live up to that standard. And like, if it's not someone close to us, right? If it's just a nephew, let's say, or just random, like, we don't really, because like, okay, yeah, you live your life, we don't care. But when it's like, oh, I really want to respect you, and therefore I'm going to kind of motivate you to be at the place where I can respect myself, and therefore I can respect you too. And I think that's sometimes the current. There's another issue, which is, this goes into a topic that I wasn't prepared to talk about, which is, so it goes into the left brain, right brain stuff. So sometimes, and I'm I'm coming from a male standpoint, so I'm just gonna say from a male standpoint. So sometimes like your significant other, like her right brain is the emotional brain. She'll feel bad about something, but then her left brain is the logical brain. She'll come up with a reason, like some kind of logic that why she's upset. And a lot of times, me, the man, I don't understand that emotional part, so I just use my left brain to solve a right brain problem, even though I think it's a left brain to left brain problem. So I'll say like, oh, well, this isn't a problem because blah blah blah. So I might have resolved the logic for whatever she brought up from the left brain, but her right brain still feels bad, feels sad. So now her left brain has to come up with a new reason to say like, okay, fine, then this is a problem. And I think a lot of men I know, they're thrown out like, oh, wait, what happened? Like, where did this come from? Okay, fine. You do this, and that problem's solved. And again, their right brain still feels sad, so they have to come up with new problems. Like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you creating problems? And it's because you haven't addressed the right brain emotional problem. And what my experience is, if you can put down all of that and use a right brain to solve right brain problem, I just hug her and I said, I love you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being so amazing. Sometimes at the beginning, she might be like, hey, wait a sec, you still have to like address the left brain thing I just mentioned. But sometimes I'm just like, no, I just love you. I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I love you. Eventually her right brain doesn't feel sad anymore. And she's like, okay, I guess I don't need to keep pushing on the left brain thing. So that is literature. When I actually can do that, it always works well for a relationship. Okay, just make her feel loved, appreciated. Then the left brain stuff, if it's a real issue, then we can resolve it over time. That moment, she wants to feel loved and appreciated and cared for. The problem is that because I respect her, I really want to address the logical things. I would be like, wait, why are you upset about this? This is not logical. This doesn't make sense. And I want to tackle that. And so, again, if she was like, this happens with marriages where, let's say, the husband is like 5 years older than the wife. He kind of sees her as like a little sister, little girl, and she's like, oh, okay, you do your like. Then he's really gonna just come to like, oh, okay, don't worry, don't throw a tantrum. Like I'm here for you, right? Like he knows he's not engaging with her intellectual conversation. He's just like comforting her. But for me, it's like, no, I want to engage with your intellectual conversation. I want to be at the same level. And the problem is that that's not the right time to do it. That moment is about emotions, and it's about you want to make her feel loved. And afterwards, discuss that. Then at that point, she'll be like, oh, yes, that thing, yeah, I was being unreasonable. So we can forget about that. So I feel like the problem is sometimes when you respect someone a lot, you want to use your own standards to tackle it. And sometimes that creates problems.
Yeah. And it's also wanting your partner to be at the same standards that you've set for yourself. When I say it now, it seems not just unrealistic, maybe not just unfair, but that's not the way it should be, right? When you enter a partnership or a marriage, it should be accepting each other for who you are, and accepting also, and hopefully you've chosen somebody with complementary skill sets. I know now this gets into kind of like business, but I think about it in this way too. When you get into a marriage and you get into a partnership, you want to have those complementary skill sets. I just filmed this podcast today about this, where my brain is always churning. I always want to do things. I want things to be done well. And sometimes that gets in the way with my children because I can get easily frustrated with them. But Kim is the complete opposite. I mean, I don't know what's going on in her head, but she's always much more chill than I am. And so when the children have a certain problem, she's able to step in, help the children calm down, be more relaxed, be more accepting. And then once the children calm down, they're able to then learn something. So this was the example today. I filmed a podcast about a beautiful oops. Juniper was drawing something. Kimball moved the paper. It like messed up her drawing, and she was emotionally distraught. Right?
I heard that story, yeah.
Oh, you heard it, yeah. And I was like, oh, this was 10 minutes of peace, and it was such a detailed drawing. Oh, I can't believe it. And I was frustrated. And then Kim came in, so calm. And she's like, oh, look at that line, Junie. It looks like she was drawing Catboy. It looks like Catboy's tail. And I'm like, oh, genius. Yes. And so, he picked it up and went from it. And that's what I mean, like complementary skill sets. And I think about it, I should be, which is the topic of the episode, grateful. I should be grateful for Kim to be able to complement our family and drive our family with her patience, her kindness, her generosity, which is all these things that she truly is. You know what I often say as a joke, Yu-kai? This is real, man. I tell Kim all the time, Kim, if with your smarts, if you had my drive, you'd be unstoppable. Because like she's really smart. Like there are many, I can't think of an example right now, but there are things like sometimes I'll ask her and I'm like, oh, that was sharp. That was really sharp.
I mean, just that example right there, you talked about how to calm Juniper down. That was like wisdom, intelligence on the spot.
Yeah, that was like next level, right? Me, I'm over here frustrated like a loser, and she comes in, boom. And so, anyways, the topic of today is that gratitude. Because when you feel gratitude to the other person, when I feel gratitude to you, Yu-kai, to Howie for doing the videos, to Kim for being my partner here, I think life is just better. Because the opposite of that is being spiteful. Oh, why don't you work harder or learn these things, because then we'll be even better parents? Or why don't you go become a data scientist so that now we can afford a bigger home? You know, like that is like the opposite end of it, of not just respect of what you were talking about, Yu-kai, but also like spite. Like, oh, look at me. Yu-kai, you and I both know when we were in our early 20s, we would be standing in line getting coffee and we'd be like working on our phones or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
and like
answering LinkedIn answer questions, building a reputation.
Right, all that layers on, and it gets to where we are today. And it's like, oh well, look at all that hard work I put in. And sometimes, right, you can feel spiteful, and what I'm trying to say is we feel this way. Maybe you don't feel that way, Yu-kai, but I've felt that way in the past. And we've had big fights. And now my mindset, I'm trying as hard as I can, is to practice gratitude. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's oftentimes the trade-off in life, right? Because you could think that right now is not the best place, so I have to constantly strive for something better. And because of that, you do get to someplace better. Or it can be like, I'm fully grateful for what I have right now, and therefore I'm happy to be here. So there's that, hey, you're just, because there's people who are unmotivated in general. They just want to sit there and watch TV all day long, right? And it's like, well, and they can probably do better if they had more motivation, they have more drive, they want to achieve higher things. And then there's people who could keep pushing for higher things, but they're never happy. And they sometimes, like you said, they get frustrated very easily, especially when people around them aren't cooperating as much with that drive or not sharing their same drive. And to me, I think success is achieving and exceeding your goals. Okay, so everyone has different goals, and so let's say if your goal is just watch TV all day long, I think if you manage to do that for your entire life, I think you're successful, right? Who are we to say no? That you should have a better goal. The problem is most people they watch TV. And their lives kind of fall apart, and then they can't pay their rent, they go into debt, they're not happy. So in a sense, they're not achieving their goals, right? If they want to maximize current pleasure, they want to go in drugs, right? Yeah. Chances are you can't do it your entire life. You have to go, you fall into a pit, and it's really hard to climb out. So I think it's important to understand your goals and then work hard towards it, because we've had people back in college where people are like, they're partying all day long, drinking, partying. And then when they're drunk, they're crying. They're like, oh, that guy's so successful. I'm not successful. Yeah. It's like, well,
was that me? I think I've done that before.
You probably have done that, but I'm thinking about someone else that I'm not. Okay. Yeah. And then there's the different standard. Like I have another very close friend, which is an interesting case where he's one of the most ambitious people I know. Like he has this drive. He wants to like make a big mark in the world. But his wife is very traditional, and her culture is that everyone just kind of fits into society in their place. Don't be ambitious about it. Like when he said he wants to go for a PhD, she's like, oh, that's very selfish. You should just go find a job and find your work fit into place society. But what was really strange about this conversation is like my friend, he was teaching his son, like was very young, about all these things. Like, oh, he was reading some books, like, hey, we need to teach. And his wife said, no, I don't want my son to be like some people like you and your friends. I want him to be a normal person. So she's saying, I don't want him to be like overachiever, doing a lot of things, being very successful. I want him to just be a normal person in society. So that's an interesting conflict, right? Because pushing the other person is one thing, but then having disagreements on how you would raise your children, that's another.
That's true. I will say I'm very grateful to Kim. Both her and I are very aligned on how we raise our children, even though we may be different in many ways. Yu-kai, I want to ask you something. It's a serious question.
Okay.
We don't have to talk about it here in the podcast because it is published. Something I've been thinking about in teaching my children is to choose a partner carefully with intent. I think you're going to teach this too, right? But I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this in that imagine who you want your partner to be. Imagine not just that, but also understand your love language. Okay, let me ask you this. I'm going on a tangent here, but is it easier in a relationship if we both have the same love language? Or, is it just like opposites attract, and that's how there's many couples who are opposites like that?
Yeah, I think so. So the love language literature, so there's 5 love languages. I, at one point, feel like that's genius, okay? That's legitimate, okay? And the 5 love languages, if I remember on the spot right now, is quality time, words of affirmation, touch, service, and gifts. 5, okay?
Nice.
And the thing is that, and this is a huge revelation to me, which is most people have like 1 or 2 main love languages, and they express their love through that, but they also receive love through that. But when you're with someone that's different, it's a mismatch. And I'll give you like 2 examples. So my ex-girlfriend, she really liked to every once in a while buy me some gifts, like a new T-shirt or whatnot. And then I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's nice, I appreciate it, and I'm like, that's good. I don't feel loved, right? And my love language is words of affirmation, maybe touch. And so I would constantly encourage people to say nice things and whatnot. So my wife Angel, she's different. Her number 1 is clearly service. Okay, so what happens here is that I would often say really loving, affectionate things to Angel, and I hug her, and then she would be doing a lot of things from like service. But I don't like, if she doesn't do it, I don't really mind. Like you live with me, right? I'm a very like easygoing, low maintenance kind of guy.
Very low maintenance.
So she'll do a lot of things. She'll watch out for things. She'll watch for dangers. She'll take care of this. I'm like, oh, thank you, I appreciate it, but I don't feel loved. And but she would not use those words of affirmation to me. So she's like strict and stressed because she's servicing. She's worried about something. She's stressed. So she doesn't usually say really nice things to me. And I would say a lot of nice things to her, but then she feels like, oh, that's all flaky. Like if you need to prove your love by doing something, right? And helping her with the kids or whatnot. And this really struck me when we were in a big fight. I know we're talking a lot of fights. We didn't have that many over the past 10 years, but we're talking about big moments, right?
Yeah.
And then she's like, we're both frustrated, both angry. And then she said, so what do you want from me? And I said, I just want you to treat me how I treat you. Yeah. And then that's when I was like, oh, right. That's interesting, because she's not hypocritical either. Because I always feel annoyed that she constantly pushes me to change and do these things, or like watch out for this. And I realize that when I do it back to her, sometimes I do it out of spite. And I'm like, I'll show you how uncomfortable this is. Yeah, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You have to do better. And I'm like, haha, now you see how annoying that is. And she doesn't get mad. She appreciates. She's like, oh, thank you for reminding me to do better. I'm like, oh, wow. And it's basically like, I'm using my love language to treat her, and she doesn't feel loved. And she's using her love language to treat me, and I don't feel loved. And that's like, we have communications about speaking the other person's language, like not your own language, right? So a big thing is you have to learn what the other person is. And even though, it's more foreign for you, you should do that, because that's how they feel loved.
So 100%. So then the question is, will you teach your children before they marry somebody to make sure there's love language compatibility?
All right. So back to the other thing, like opposite attract, right?
Yeah,
I think there's this thing where when you get attracted to someone, the freshness really matters. And back to the octalysis, right? Unpredictable curiosity. Oh, I've never met someone like that before. So interesting. Scarcity, right? If someone's like clinging on you and being always available, then they get friend zoned, right? But if someone's like high status, like, yeah, sure, we can hang out, but I got other things to do. Then you're like, oh, this guy's so cool. I want to hang out with him more, right? And then the social status, if everyone's going for someone. And so oftentimes you physically get attracted to someone that may not be the most compatible. And that's why, some good marriages, people literally say like, hey, I married my best friend, right? And those tend to have a much more promising like future, like long lasting future, than it's like, oh, we met and we are like the spark of love and chemistry, and it was like we just had so much fun hanging out, and then we got married. It's like, oh wow, now you're gonna do diapers together. That's not that fun, right? And so I think it's good to find, you could date for fun, but I think you really should try to marry for compatibility.
I think so too. My children will learn about the love languages early. I don't know how early, but I will teach them at a certain point. And then I think I also want to teach them that marriages are hard. Business partnerships are hard. All these things, right? These things where you have to work together is extremely difficult. And I wonder, should we make strides to try to make it easier? Example is find somebody that has a similar love language to you. Or, I mean, if you didn't know about that and now you're with somebody, you just have to be grateful and accepting, and you just have to work even harder, right? We talk about you are dealt a certain hand, and you can either complain or you can work with it and try to make it the best situation possible, love each other, grow, whatever your talents are. You can develop your skill set and then become a successful person from that. In the same way, the person that you love and you married, there may be challenges, but you can be grateful. You can choose to be grateful, and you can choose to communicate in that love language. Or you can choose to just be sulky and upset because they don't understand you, and like that's not productive. What are you going to do with that, right?
Yeah, I think that actually is a very good key summary about the issue we're talking about today, which is for those you can still change, be driven, set goals, work on it, improve constantly. For those for those things that you can no longer change, it's very difficult to change. Just be grateful, right?
Yes.
You already chose your partner. You're not going to choose another partner, at least on a whim, right? So be grateful of the partner, and you can't change other people. You can change yourself, right? We know our spouses aren't going to be like, hey, do this, and suddenly they become us. They become a totally different person. Like then we're like, even if that happens, we're like, who are you? I didn't marry this person. Like how did you suddenly change to someone different, right? So we can't really change other people, but we can change ourselves. We can improve ourselves. And like I said, dating is a stage that requires some skill sets. Marriage is a new stage that requires skill sets, and having kids another stage. The chances of you already having all those skill sets at the beginning is just almost impossible, right? You have to learn those, grow, and start performing in those stages. Because we always use a gamified analogy. So it's like you just have to constantly improve yourself, and so you don't say like, why is she not treating me well? You think about how can I communicate with her better so she treats me the way I want, right? That's how you should think about it. How do you improve? Because you control your actions, and everything else is a response to your action.
Yeah, man. I love that summary. I love this end. We're here coming up until the 30 minutes. We're trying to keep it right around 30 minutes as best as we can. I do want to say one comment. You mentioned one of the goals is to, I think, accomplish something and get to the end. I've been thinking a lot about this, and the more I think about it, I think we have to love and fall in love with the process, because it's only when we fall in love with the process that we can maintain the level of drive and motivation in order to continue pushing forward. Now, what do I mean by this? So we have a product called Capsule. We're going to soft launch that in mid-April at UCLA. And in doing so, I've been working hard to try to onboard some UCLA students to work with us. And I've been talking, quite a few. Some of them are interested, then they kind of fall out. Some of them are interested, they never respond. Some of them are interested, and blah, blah, blah. So you just keep going at it. One, two, I think I talked to 6, 7 people. And today, maybe the 8th or 9th person, I believe we're going to hire somebody. And we're going to onboard them, and they're going to be part of the team. I'm pretty sure this is going to hit. So I was thinking to myself, wow, like, if I had given up on the 4th person or the 5th person or the 6th person, then I would have never gone into the 9th person. And you have to love that process of rejection, because you're always going to hit these failures. You're always going to, your first videos aren't going to get thousands and hundreds of thousands of views. But if you fall in love with the process, if you choose something where you fall in love with the process, then I think it's inevitable that you will be successful. I think, I really starting to think that way. If you love the process and you just do it every day and you get better every day, then success is inevitable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, right now our show is getting 30 views a day or whatnot, or not our episode, and my stuff, like, my blog gets, I think, 30,000 visitors a month. My TED Talk has over 300,000 views, so it's not a lot. So, but we were talking about, hey, the key is consistency, and we want to make sure that we enjoy doing this. We got to set up, like, we don't want to do all this fancy intro, whatnot. If we're gonna do this, we have to do it to the point where we just enjoy doing it. Even if in 2 years no one watches it, we just like doing it, so we can keep doing it. So I think that's important. And this is the gamified life. Gamification is about enjoying what you're doing. And a lot of people, they might feel like, oh, Yu-kai's living such a good life right now. He's traveled the world doing speeches, and he just talks about games. He play games as research. He gets money spent on games. He gets paid more than a high-paying lawyer. But what people don't know is for 7 years, I spent, between 90, 100 hours a week working without any pay. And I did it because I was just passionate about gamification. I was excited about this. And I know a lot of people probably give up on year 3, on year 4, year 5, year 6. And I kind of just pushed through to year 7. And that's when, the industry boomed. I published Octalysis Framework and things took off. And I was recognized as one of the earlier pioneers in that whole field. And I didn't do it, like, if you do something, if you start a company just because you want to be your own boss and just to get rich, you're not going to go very far, because, first of all, at the beginning, you're definitely not rich, right? You're pretty poor. You can barely afford Starbucks and whatnot. And then, when you're your own boss, basically everyone's your boss. Your customers, your boss, investors are your boss, your employees, you're not paying them enough. You're like, oh, please help do this work. I know you're not paying a lot, and you have to suck up to them too, almost, right? And so everyone's your boss. So if that's your only motivation, you drop out. You have to be passionate about the goal, and you have to enjoy the lifestyle of an entrepreneur or doing gamification or whatnot to sustain and be consistent. I don't think it's quote unquote inevitable that you'll be successful, but you definitely maximize your probability of success. Right, because if you see, like, sometimes I give an analogy that entrepreneurship is like playing baseball blindfolded. You're just swinging your bat, and if you swing once and you give up, the chance of you getting any result is very, very low. But if you swing 100 times, and actually every time you swing, you get a little better. It's like, okay, I can hear the ball now. I can understand how the wind flows. Then the chance of hitting a home run, or just at least getting some results, is very high. So the key is consistency, keep pushing at it, keep growing, improving. And I think most people who become successful get there. But those who give up on the 3rd try, obviously if you give up, you're not successful, right? That defines failure, you gave up. But if you don't give up, then you're still in the game, and if you push it long enough, you maximize your chance of achieving success.
Yep. Love it, man. Okay. With that, I think we're going to adjourn here. To everybody, thank you for listening. We want to chat with you. If you leave a comment, if you tweet us on Twitter, we will chat with you. And if you have any questions about our life, about how we treat our wives, if you have any comments about that, we'd love to hear it as well. But Yu-kai, always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm grateful to you as well. Thank you for hopping on and spending time with me.
Thank you. Grateful, equally grateful.
See you guys on the next one.
See ya.